Oops. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Edmond Otis, and I'm delighted you've taken this afternoon to come here. Today's topic is we just have an hour, and it's going to be brief. And I like the title because it seems to promise a lot in that just making it all a bit easier. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some real simple principles about how to deal with stress or challenges. But first, a little bit about my background. Fiona's right, I talk a lot, but that's partly because I'm from the US, as you can tell from the accent. My family and I moved here in 2008. Prior to that, we'd come over to visit and fell in love with New Zealand. So the whole family moved over in 2008. And then in 2015, we became citizens. As I keep joking, that's so you guys can't get rid of us. So we're here. But we have dual citizenship. My own background, I do a couple of different things. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I work with families, groups, but my oldest background and my longest background is I'm involved in sport. I've practiced traditional karate since I was 12. And I was on the US national team and I was US national coach. And when I decided to leave competition, I realized for myself that what was most important to me to performing well is what went on in my head and what went on in my emotions and how that brought over into how I interacted with people. So I went back to graduate school for psychology. I was at the University of California for quite a while. Then we moved here. And currently I'm a senior lecturer at EIT in the Hawke's Bay in health and sports science. And I do a lot of the whole voodoo sports psychology, health psychology kind of stuff. Today, I'll just jump right into it, but my main focus today is what I'd like to do and how I think about it when I work with clients is to take some basic principles and see how we can apply that to a broad range of situations. And the broad range of situations is going to be you guys thinking about what's challenging for you right now. What's going on for you that either you wish were easier or you wish you had more tools or you recognize it's supposed to be challenging, but you want to handle it a little bit better. Some of this stuff will apply. I have to say right off the bat that most of you, specifically because, and I say this because you decided to listen to this workshop, most of you are probably doing a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about already. You may just not be aware of it, or you may think of it in different terms. But all the way through, we have time for questions. There's a lot of us here. You can send through a message to Fiona, and she'll read it to me. If you want to, we'll see how that works. You turn your microphone on, you just start talking, and I'm happy if we do that. But I do recognize there's a time limit, and we want to stay on track. So I'll share the screen. I would like, hopefully, that you have some note paper. You could take some notes. There's some things I'm going to ask for you to write down and think about a little bit, and then do some application back and forth. Okay. So today's topic is kind of a catchy, friendly little phrase, making it all a little easier. And of course, the implication is, there's a lot of things right now that are challenging for us. And perhaps more so now than ever before, in a sense, because we're so aware of what's going on around us. The fact that all of us have devices, the fact that we live in a 24-hour news cycle, the fact that everybody is connected more or less, or either truly or not truly, to everything else all the time, raises our awareness of the challenges all around us, because humans are prone to look for danger. So what that means and how that translates is we keep an eye out for anything that may be challenging. So all of us have a lot of real world actual challenges. The last 3 years that we just came out of, the COVID, the economy, things that are going on with our youth, a variety of things are actually challenging. And at the same time, we seem to be more and more aware of challenges everywhere. So my task, my hope is to see if we can do some things that when I work with clients for myself, we can use to think about some constructs to make these challenges easier to cope with and easier to deal with. Through here, I will mention sport a bit. I don't expect all of us to be athletes by any sense, but the only reason I bring sport is that it is my background and I do a lot of mental skills coaching. But fundamentally, why I'm interested in that is not the physicality of it. But sport, by definition, is an environment that the better we do, the more challenged we are, right? The whole point of it is to do well in a stressful situation. Well, that may be fine on a rugby field, but that's also talking to my teenager or negotiating with my boss or trying to figure out how I can do all the things I need to do. What I'm fundamentally interested in is how well do we perform in stressful situations? And by perform, I mean being able to do the things we need to do or do the things we want to do. That's it, okay. Like a lot of things, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is simple, but it's not always easy. We'll talk about some simple concepts, but then the challenge, of course, is applying those concepts in ways that are most effective in situations we find stressful. Okay, so today, what we're going to do, I've kind of thought about this. I'd like to spend the hour wisely, is we're going to look at two specific cognitive strategies, one stress reduction technique to make dealing with all the stress, the change in the conflict we're seeing a little bit easier. So two techniques, my hope is we can decide to use and think about, and one stress reduction technique. Another time, or else I do a lot of work around communication skills, but that takes a different group. A lot of what we're talking about today in the Hawke's Bay, I developed about 4 or 5 years ago a youth program in resilience. It's 4 modules. We're in lots of the high schools in Hastings and Napier and the surrounding Hawke's Bay, teaching skills to teenagers to, again, be more resilient, deal with stress. And what we look at is we look at 3 focus points. One is, how do I think about the challenges and how do I think about myself? Those are cognitive strategies. The other is, how do I deal with the stress? The other is, how do I make difficult conversations easier, communicate with each other? It seems when you look at the research, those 3 things working together are almost everything we need to do. So I'm interested in that, and that's what we'll look at. When we get to the stress, I want to say I'm not going to focus so much on how you can make your life less stressful, although that's very useful. What I'm going to focus on instead is one technique that we see works when you're in situations that you can't change the situation, right? There's 2 ways of dealing with stress. One is we change the situation if we can, but the other is, what can we do if we find ourselves in that situation and we can't make it different? So how do we work on ourselves and do something with ourselves so we're able to better handle that type of situation? I want to keep in mind, I know a lot of you are here from different environments. I'm sure some of you are here to see if any of these principles can apply to you. I'm sure most of you were thinking about perhaps, do these principles apply to families? Some of you are here from your work. We're interested, do these principles apply to organizations you're involved in, businesses you're involved in, if you work with ministries, if you work with a client base? Okay, we want to keep in mind that most behavior principles are flexible. And that's what we're working on today, behavior principles. We know that the same principles that apply to individuals often apply to groups. The same principles that apply to groups often apply to families or teams or businesses or even countries. Most importantly, the same principles that apply to us also apply to them. So hopefully, some of the stuff we look at, and this all comes from research, we can apply in a variety of environments. So here's what we know. People that struggle more tend to think, act, and react differently than people who seem to have an easier time of it. Okay, and that's as simply as I can put it, right? So you put 2 people in the same situation. Some people have a more challenging time in that same situation for an entire range of reasons. Some people have an easier time for an entire range of reasons. So we know the people who struggle more, that have a harder time, or you can look at it the other way, people who have an easier time tend to think, act, and react differently than people who seem to do it the other way. And so we're going to look at some of that today. One of the things we know, the people who struggle more, that have a harder time, they tend to turn inward. They tend to be a bit more self-conscious. They tend to be harsher on themselves. They tend to say to themselves, if they're having a difficult time, there must be something wrong with me, as opposed to, well, this is a bad situation. Okay? They tend to turn inward rather than reach out. Okay, so again, here's an example of where I think of sport, but for a specific reason. If you look at the image on the left, it's Valerie Adams. She's a Kiwi athlete, one of the best athletes in the world right now. She's world champion shot putter. If you look at on the right, of course, we have the All Blacks, one of the most successful sporting franchises of all time. And the only reason I bring this up, so you have the best team and you have the best individual in what they've chosen to do. For me, what's important here is if you look at Valerie Adams, and the question is, how many coaches does she have? Now, some of you may know sport, but if you don't, it doesn't really matter. Okay, world class. And she was in Hawke's Bay about a year and a half ago at the national championships, and she had several coaches. So depending on where she is in her career and her training, she has 5, 6, or 7 coaches, depending on what's going on. She has someone she calls coach, but she also has a nutrition coach, a strength and conditioning coach, a mental skills coach. She has a variety of coaches. And the only reason I bring that up is I guarantee you, she's better at shot putting than any of her coaches. But the reason her coaches are there is when she isn't doing as well as she wants, instead of being embarrassed, putting her head down, thinking there's something wrong with me, she turns around and she goes to her coach and says, what do I need to do? Turns out the people who have an easier time of stuff are more willing to reach out and ask for help. That's an important factor. It's not one of the things we're going to talk about, but that's an important factor. Okay, you look at the All Blacks. All Blacks, depending on where they are in the season, if you count all the athletes, between, I believe it's 17 and 18, 19 coaches, head coach, assistant coach, scrum coach, tackling coach, all that stuff. Again, the best sporting group in the world, best sporting team in the world, all of them play rugby brilliantly. If something isn't going well, they reach out and they ask for help. That seems to be one of the most important factors about people who have an easier time of it. People who have a harder time of it tend to feel embarrassed or they feel shame that things aren't going well. People that have an easier time, and they feel that if they ask for help or talk to somebody, that there's something wrong with them. People who have an easier time of it, who want to do better, they look around and they reach out. So that's one factor we can look at. Okay, you can look at, who do you have as your support person or your support people or your advisors? For those of you who have some background either in psychology or sociology, there's 2 big thinkers. One is named Margaret Mead, and one is named Abraham Maslow, if you're familiar with them. Margaret Mead is an anthropologist. Maslow is a psychologist. Maslow developed this idea called the hierarchy of needs. And basically, it speaks to the fact that we need to have basic needs met before we could be more sophisticated, right? So for example, we need to have survival needs. We need oxygen, warmth, water, food, all that kind of stuff in the immediate before I can worry about other things. From there, we need safety. From there, we tend to take care of our families, and it goes on up. Margaret Mead has several favorite quotes, but my favorite of hers is, always remember that you are absolutely unique, just like everybody else. I think that's relevant. And where these 2 come together is if you think about it for yourselves, if you think about people you know, the more stressed we are, the more challenged we are, the more overwhelmed we are, the more scared we are, the more we're aware of what we aren't able to do, the more similar we become. Okay, we only become really sophisticated and different and interesting when all our basic needs are met, right? If it's nice out and we have enough money and we have a closet full of clothes, we spend some time thinking, oh, what should I wear today? Because I want to look good. Okay, if it's freezing out and we don't have any electricity, we don't have any energy, and I haven't had any food and it's freezing cold, I will put anything on just to survive. So we know from psychology, from critical incident debrief training, that the more challenged we are, the more overwhelmed we are, the more frustrated we are, the more similar we become. Which means at those points when we're challenged, we can do some very basic things that seem to help a lot. Okay, so one question earlier, you may want to think about, who is your team? Who can you share with? Who can you ask for help? And you may want to ask yourself also, do you do that? When things are challenging, when it's really difficult, do you tend to look in, hold it in, and feel embarrassed? Well, basically, the situation is challenging. Do you reach out to others just to share what's going on and perhaps get some insights? Okay, so before we go on, what I'd like to do is what I think of as the miracle question. Okay, you have a piece of paper and a pencil, or you can do it in your head. If today helps, If today, what we do today helps, what are 3 things that it might help with? Right, so if you can think of 3 challenging situations that you wish were easier for you, you wish weren't such a challenge, weren't so difficult, okay? What are 3 things? And I'd like you to just write those down. We're not going to share with anybody. But then what we're going to do is think about some techniques, and we're going to come back. And my interest is, are some of the techniques we talk about, could you apply them to what you find challenging right now? So it could be work, it could be relationships, it could be family, it could be yourself, it could be anything. Okay, but if the title of the workshop is, making it all a little easier, what are 3 things you wish you could make a little bit easier? And I'll stop talking for a couple minutes. Fiona, it's too bad we don't have background music. This would be a good time for background music. Never mind.
You could sing.
Oh, no. No. That would be too challenging for everybody. Okay. So the nice thing about making a list like that is as we go forward, you could add things, you can erase them, you could do something more. Some of you, if you can't think of anything that you find challenging, everything's in total control. We should change places and you should be teaching this. Okay. Some of you, if you can't stop yourself at 3, 5, 10, 15, you just keep writing. We'll try to look at some of the basics. But I'm interested in what we talk about, if you can go back and see how that might help. Okay. The kind of work I do basically is called behavioral psychology. And what that means is there's different schools of psychology, different theories and all, but behavioral psychology basically says what you do affects how you feel. It's really, really simple. What you do affects how you feel. So for example, okay, we know that if you want to be happier, what seems to help being happier is to stand up taller and try to smile more, whether your situation has changed at all. We know, for example, if you think about sport, that one of the main reasons, for example, the All Blacks do the haka is it is impossible to do the haka without feeling stronger and more energized. It's impossible. Okay, so you do the haka, you do it with your mates, you feel stronger and you feel more connected to people next to you. We know that the things we tell ourselves have a direct impact in how we feel. So behavioral psychology basically says what you want to do, or what I encourage us to do, is act the way you eventually want to feel. Okay, and I'll give you an example. I don't know if we could do this with this many people. Okay, but this is my favorite thing. Okay. Okay, if all of you can turn your microphones on. Okay. And you can even turn your cameras on. I can see some of you, not most of you, but there's a lot of you there and you all look so nice. Okay, here's the deal. Here's what I'd like you to do, right? You have to repeat after me. Okay, nice big voice. I suck.
I suck.
I definitely don't suck.
Wait.
I'm not sucking today.
Wait, just that. Hold on. Okay, one more time. I suck.
I suck.
Wait, one more time. I suck.
I suck.
Okay,
Nope.
now wait, now repeat after me. Yay me.
Yay
Me.
Right? Yay me.
Yay
Me.
One more time. Yay me.
Yay me.
Now, stop repeating. Okay, now, all of you, as silly as this is, feel better after you say yay me than after you say I suck. Just a little bit.
Can't even say I suck.
You can't even say it, right? But all of you, just a little bit, even though you know it, there's no stopping it. Let's try it one more time. Ready? I suck.
I suck.
Wait. Yay me.
Yay me.
You feel better. You still feel better. What that is an example of behavioral psychology. What we did affects how we feel. And there's a billion examples of that. But this is the simplest. We have 2 simple phrases made out of 2 syllables. You don't have any motivation to say them other than that you're being nice to me and doing something I've asked you, which is very nice. But still, when you do that, when the words come out of your mouth, the sounds come out of your mouth, it affects how you feel. That's behavioral psychology. Lots of people every day, and since I thought about this, it's silly, and you can't do this in public, right? Because people look at you funny. My wife's used to me now. But in the morning, if I'm in the bathroom shaving or brushing my teeth, I take some time to go, yay me. Seriously, I say it 3 times. It just makes you feel better. One is because it's so silly. But we know that there's a lot of people, one way or another, who do spend a lot of time going, I suck, or I can't do this, or this is terrible. Athletes who are successful walk out in the field and go, I got this. Athletes who are successful walk out in the field and go, oh, this isn't going to work. But the same applies to everything. The absolute action of literally saying the words. And I'm a big believer, and there's some research to support it, saying it is actually better and has a better effect that affects your brain in different ways than thinking it. Thinking it's cool. But again, I wouldn't walk down the street going, yay me, because somebody's going to lock you up. Okay. But if you're by yourself in private, this isn't a public sharing thing. Say the things you want to feel about yourself. That becomes really interesting. Okay. So let's go look at some examples here. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to look at is 2 cognitive strategies we can all use to make things a little bit easier. One is called the GPS method. And basically what I feel is that there's a GPS in your head. Okay, so everybody knows how a GPS works. Okay, it's called triangulation, right? So if I have a GPS, I'm in Napier right now. Let's say I want to go to Wellington. I put Wellington in. It communicates with the satellite, which communicates someplace in Wellington, sends a message back. If you think about it, it's a little creepy that there's always a satellite who knows where you are, but that's a whole different thing. Okay, so basically, I send a message, okay, to a satellite or to my GPS, sends back. Okay, now here's the question. I'd like you to write it down. Okay, just real simple. When you do that, what does your GPS tell you? What does your GPS tell you? What information does it give you? Real simple. Okay, you've used GPS. What does your GPS tell you?
Direction.
Okay. Some say direction. No. What else? Anybody else?
It tells you where you are.
Tells you where you are? No. Doesn't do that. What is it?
Tells you how to get there.
Nope. Doesn't tell you how to get there. Say again. Say what?
Gives you a location.
Nope. Okay. So here's nope. Nope. Okay. Wait. Let me tell you. Let me tell you. Okay. Now this, when I say this, it's going to sound remarkably simple, but it's really important. The only thing your GPS tells you, and this is crucial, is what to do next. Literally. Okay. So, and I'm talking about the little voice that comes out of the little phone. Okay. The GPS only tells you what to do. Now, how is this important to making things a little easier? Turns out when something goes bad or something is challenging, kind of like the yay me and I suck thing, we spend a lot of time going, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. People who have an easier time of it, make things a little bit easier. Everybody starts out with, oh no. But people have an easier time with it, more quickly end up asking themselves, what should I do now? What do I need to do now? And that's almost a shortcut to putting yourself on the path to making the problem less challenging. That's really, really important. Okay, so we can look, for example, oops. Okay, does anybody know what the first kind of, let me undo this. I'm dying to see you guys, but there's so many of you. Okay, the first GPS was called, what is the original GPS called? Does anybody know? It's called an MAP. It's a map, right? Okay, and what that means is when you have a map, you lay the map out and there's 2 things you need to know. One thing you need to know is where you want to go. So if this was old school, I open a map, I want to go to Wellington. The other thing I need to know is where I am. Then I find the path to go to Wellington. GPS thinking is both those things. One is you figure out where you want to go, how you would like this to end up. Then you say to yourself, you have to know where you are. And then the question is, what do I need to do now? Now, the second thing about a GPS that's important in your head, and all of you have done this, what I like about this most, if the GPS says, go to the corner and turn right, and I go to the corner and I turn left, the GPS doesn't go, Ed, you are such an idiot. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. What's wrong with you? Why can't you follow directions? GPS doesn't care. GPS always has your back. All the GPS says is go to the next corner and turn right. If I don't do that, GPS still doesn't care. It says go to the next corner and turn right. No matter how many mistakes I make, there's some aspect of the GPS that's just interested in telling me how I can eventually get to where I want to go. Okay, this is an important concept, and this seems to be what most people do who have a better time at dealing with challenging situations. Okay, they're able to say, where am I? Where do I want to go? And then what do I need to do now? And then they're able to do that. Does that make any sense, anybody? So here's what I'd like you to do. We'll just have a couple minutes. Look at the list I asked you to write up about things that are challenging. Okay. If you wanted to make that situation better, if you wanted to make that situation easier, ask yourself, if you, as soon as we got off our computers today, and I'm going to fix this, I'm going to make this a little bit better. Ask yourself, what's the first thing you would do? Just the very first thing you would do that moves you in the right direction. Then maybe, what's the second thing you would do? That's all you want to ask yourself. Okay, take a couple minutes and do that. Usually we have conversations, but there's too many of us doing that. Okay. So that is a method for making things a little bit easier. Okay. Instead of going, I mean, right, when I do the GPS, I go to Wellington, it doesn't go, I don't know, it's pretty far. It literally says, go to the corner and turn right. So if you wanted to make that situation less challenging, make it a little bit easier for you, what's the first thing you would do? Now, for some of you, it's going to be behavioral. I would do this. For some of you, it might be cognitive. You might start thinking about it differently. For some of you, it might be reaching out and getting someone to work with you or help you. For some of you, it might be working on yourself and helping yourself feel a bit better about it. I have no idea. But it would be a conscious effort of doing something that moves you in that direction. Again, I wish it was more complex, but it's not. I wish it was fancier, but it's not. When we look at people problem solve, when we look at people in a crisis, we look at people in difficult situations, we find that the people who resolve these situations better are able to say, what should I do now? And then they're able to do that one step. Does that make any sense? Okay, if you're done with that, maybe go to the second one. If you wanted to make that one a little bit easier, what's the first thing you would do? Okay. Now, undoubtedly, some of you are going, yeah. But I don't know what the first thing I should do is. Okay. That becomes the first thing you should do. If I really don't know what to do, people are good at making things easier. They realize the first thing they need to do is think about what they need to do. They can maybe reach out and ask for some help. They can consult somebody. They can do some research. They can catch their breath. Okay, but that becomes a really interesting kind of model. Just simply, what do I need to do now? And again, if it turns out to be wrong, like a real GPS, well, that didn't work. What should I do now? And that seems to be one of the large differences between people who have an easier time dealing with situations and not. Now, some people I recognize do that naturally. Some people don't. It doesn't really matter. It's the doing it that really counts. Okay. So that's one skill we can use, right? GPS in your head. Okay. Now you'll recognize it does require 2 bits of information. Where are you now? What is your situation now? Where do I want to be? What do I need to do? Okay, what is my destination? Sometimes if we find ourselves in a challenging situation, we don't know what the destination is. That becomes what your GPS is for. What I need to do is figure out how this would be better. So I think about the situation, figure out what would make it better, and then I move in that direction. Okay. We'll have time for questions afterwards. I know we have some questions coming in. Okay. So if that makes sense, that's one strategy we can look at. Okay. Okay. So again, what we just did, if you look at your list, what might your GPS tell you? What's the first thing you could do that would help make that problem better, make that situation better? Not the big picture, just the first thing. Okay. Let's look at a second one. This is just more of that. GPS question is always, what is the first thing I need to do to get to where I want to go? Only that. Because you have to do that thing to get to your destination, and that's important. Now, the trouble is, or a paradox is, people who are good at this recognize what they need to do, and then they start doing it. People have a challenge with this, go, oh, I need to do that. I can't do that. And they use that as a reason not to do it. But again, I'm only interested in behavior. Okay. So what do I need to do? And then they do that. Okay. And if you still don't know what to do next, you find out, you reach out for help. Okay. You go to your coaches. You know, I'm in this situation. You have any thoughts? You have any suggestions? Do you see anything I'm doing that's just leading me back to what I don't want to happen? Be open. You don't have to take all the ideas. You get to consider them. Okay. Second cognitive strategy we have, because different people think differently, is what we call values to action. Okay, I like this a lot. Most of us, if we work in an organization, those organizations have what we think of as a mission statement, right? This is what we want to accomplish. This is our goal. This is who we are. This is who we want to be. And basically what that does is that identifies our values. The question is, am I able to use those values in a productive way? Okay, so one question is, what kind of person do you want to be? Now, in the situation you're in that's challenging, what kind of person do you need to be? And if you were that person, what would you do? Okay, so let's go back to your list again. You have 3 challenging situations. And let's say to ourselves, okay, to make these situations easier for me, what kind of person, and just pick one, what kind of person do I need to be to do well in dealing with this situation? Then the second question is, if I was that kind of person, what would I do? Then, once you've identified that, you do that. Okay. And there's all kinds of things. You know, some people, you know, they just need to be more patient. That's me, right? I really do. I need to be more patient. And so I think about that. And if I were to use this, and I try to use this, it goes, well, if I was more patient, what would I do? Then I do that. You know, if I was more patient, what would I do? Well, maybe I'd stop talking and I'd listen. If I was more patient, then I would do that. Or if I was more patient, what would I do? Well, maybe I'll just wait and see how this turns out. And then I try to do that. Some people feel like they need to be more confident. Makes sense. It's a trap to say, oh, I wish I was more confident, but I'm not, so I'm just going to sit here. With this, remember, it's behavioral psychology. If I was more confident, what would I do? And then you do that. Okay. Okay, to handle this, I just need to be smarter. It's challenging. Okay, if I was smarter, what would I do? And then I do that. Okay, so again, very, very simple, but we seem to see that people who deal well with situations, a certain percentage of them actually think in these terms. What kind of person do I need to be to do well here? Then if I was that kind of person, what would I do? And then we do that. That becomes really useful. I have all kinds of silly examples, right? Maybe you want to be a good person. Well, if you're a good person, what would you do today? And then you do that. Maybe you want to be a good spouse or a good partner. If I was a good partner, what would I do? You know, with the kids program, with the program we're in the schools, we always do this. So we're all in the high schools. And, you know, how many of you would like to be better students? And half of them roll their eyes and half of them actually raise their hands. So you catch when you go, okay, if you were a better student, what would you do? And they go, I'd study. Then you do that. Okay. Athlete, a good friend, a good family member. Maybe I want to be good to myself. If I was good to myself, what would I do? And then we do that. Now, these are all really, really simple, but it seems, okay, it seems that these things, because they're simple, have a very broad application. We can use this in all different kinds of ways. Okay, so again, you could look at your list. Get out of here for a second. There you all are. Okay, you could look at your list. Okay. So you'd look at the list of 3 challenges you have, and you say to yourself, and you just play with this for a minute, we'll give you a minute. And again, normally we break into groups, but there's just too many of us. And you say to yourself, okay, in order to have an easier time, what kind of person do I need to be to deal with this situation? You've got to identify that kind of person. You need to write a word down. Calmer, confident, more aggressive, less aggressive, more patient, less patient, whatever. But then the next step is, if I was that kind of person, what would I do? Now you have to decide to do that. Now you'll recognize that this is very, very similar, okay, to the GPS method, right? And the key component, the similar component is you identify behavior and then you do that behavior. Okay? You don't wait to feel nicer. If you really wanted to be nicer, I don't know what that feels like. It doesn't matter what it feels like. If you really wanted to be nicer, what would you do? And then we do that. Does that make any sense? Okay. So those are 2 cognitive strategies we can use. There are others, but these seem to be the most accessible with the broadest application. Second thing we want to talk about is a little bit about stress. Again, because almost everything I talk about and I work with, I try to make it really, really simple, but I recognize that just because it's simple doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy. I realize that. Okay, so when we look at stress, we know that all kinds of things cause stress. Okay. Stress has gotten a bad rap over the last 10 or 15 years, but the truth is, you know, there's good stress and there's bad stress. Okay, all the things we're excited about, that we enjoy doing, that we want to spend time doing, those causes stress. If we're excited about something, inherently that's stress. Okay, it isn't necessarily bad, right? We know that there's bad stress, is stuff that we're just overwhelmed with. We recognize both those things. The kind of stress I'm interested for today, in the amount of time we have left today, the kind of stress I'm most interested in is, what do you do with the kind of stress that feels like it's overwhelming to you, but you can't change the situation, or it causes you stress to think about changing the situation? So we'll do one exercise that we can use, right? One thing, first though, if we think about stress in a real simple way, anytime we're stressed, tell you what, just do this right now. On that same piece of paper, it could be the same as your list above, but in general, write down 3 things that cause you stress. If you can just think of 3 things that cause you stress. I like writing it down so I get to see it on paper. Three things that cause you stress. Usually the thing that causes you stress is, one way to think about it, it's kind of an absence of resources. We don't have enough time, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough patience, we don't have enough knowledge. Okay, it's overwhelming in that sense. Okay, but more importantly, if you look at those things, when we're stressed, okay, it focuses our attention. And basically the stress, there's 2 stress emotions. One is fear or worry. So I guarantee you, most of the things in the 3 stressors you wrote down, okay, the thing that stresses you about them is focused on, oh no, what's going to happen? Or what if this happens? Or I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's very future based. We're worried about what's going to happen. That causes us stress. What if this happens? What if that happens? The other is usually we're focused on the past. Something happened that we can't get over, we can't forgive, we can't ignore, okay, that's causing us a lot of worry about the future. So most of us, when we're under stress, we are either consciously focused on the future or consciously focused on the past. Both of those things are stressful. Now, again, it's not necessarily bad, right? If I have to do something or I have a project coming up, I want to focus on the future in terms of planning it. But the kind of stress that wakes us up in the middle of the night and we can't get to sleep tends to be fairly diffuse. So we know the stress emotions either carry us into the future, okay, or drag us into the past. The only place where there is no stress is in the now, okay? And I know that sounds quasi-meditative and touchy-feely, but it's true. If you think about the times where you don't have stress, you just have enjoyment and pleasure and satisfaction, you're focused on what's going on now, or you feel that you have some control over it. Okay, so there's all kinds of techniques you can use. Okay, what I want to do is just one real simple technique. Okay, and it doesn't matter saying it doesn't. You don't have to say bad things in public. Okay, so real simple. Then I'll explain how it goes. Again, remember, and there's a whole series of these that we use, but this is kind of the easiest one I can communicate here. Okay. What I'd like you to do, and I can't tell if you're doing, but if you turn your cameras up, if you want to do that, if you can, okay? All I want you to do, okay, make a fist, cross it over your shoulders, okay? So your arms are close to your body, your fist is close to your body, and all we're going to do is for 15 seconds, I want us to squeeze our fists and turn your cameras on, turn your microphones on too, if you can. Cool. Okay. So all we're going to do, okay, again, you don't do this in public because people lock you up. Okay, take your fist, which is stressful in itself. Okay, and for 15 seconds, I want to squeeze my hands, my arms, my shoulders, my body, okay, everything I can, absolutely as hard as I can. Ready? Go. Harder, 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 harder. Squeeze harder. More. Don't give up. Try to give yourself a nosebleed. Squeeze harder. Harder, 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 more, tighter, tighter, tighter. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, let go.
Squeeze harder, harder, harder.
Wait, let go. Now let it go. Okay, now wait. When we let it go, most of you, at least one's microphone, and in fact, if you're squeezing hard, right now you can still feel that your arms feel relieved, your hands feel relieved, your shoulders feel relieved. There's a sense of well-being. Okay. And again, this is almost silly, except it's so useful. When we're under stress, we have a moderate amount of constant non-productive tension. It's hard to relax that. But it turns out if we intensely focus and energize as hard as we can, then relax, we become aware of the release of tension. We become aware of that relaxation. That changes some little amounts of brain chemistry. And just for those moments, you feel more relaxed. It literally reduces your stress. Now, it isn't to say this is going to solve your problems, but if you're just laying awake all night, where this really works if you have a hard time sleeping, and if you're sleeping with somebody, you have to warn them you're going to do this. Care if you sleep by yourself, but seriously, hard time sleeping, 5 seconds, hard as I can, 10 seconds, relax. 5 seconds, hard as I can, 10 seconds, relax. You'll probably get to about 3 rounds and you'll fall asleep. Okay. As opposed to thinking it, you are become aware of the sensation of a lack of tension by causing more tension. And then there's a sense of relief that tells your body, things aren't so bad. Things are in control. Also, one of the things we suggest is there's nothing as useful as a little bit of exercise, okay, to reduce stress, to reduce tension. If you can 3 times a week get so you're out of breath, it's that same kind of thing. Okay, you hit what they call target heart rate, but then you stop, you're out of breath, you catch a deep breath. Right there, you feel less stress. Your body is doing what happens when you feel relief. That gives messages to your emotions and messages to your brain that tells you that the stress is gone. So if that makes any sense, that becomes useful. But I like this one a lot. But again, Don't do it in public because people will think there's literally something wrong with you. Okay. Okay. So I want to review what we've talked about. And then what I'm interested in is if the miracle question, those 3 challenges you had, if you think some of these things might be useful for you. Okay, so let me go back and then I have time to show you a really quick video. Okay, so the 3 things we did, oops. We looked at 2 cognitive strategies. Well, we got to say I suck in public, which was always fun. Okay, we looked at 2 cognitive strategies. Okay, one is the GPS method. And literally, in a situation, people who seem to be good at resolving problems, okay, making things easier, are able to ask themselves literally, what do I need to do now? And then they do that. They don't look at the big totality. They know what the target is. They know what the goal is. They know what the destination is. But they're able to ask themselves, what's the first thing I need to do now? That becomes really useful. If they make a mistake and it doesn't turn out, they don't beat themselves up in the same way the GPS says, go to the next corner and turn right. So if you can use that, I think that's useful. And any strategist does this, whether you work, if you've ever done emergency medical stuff, that's all it is. What do I need to do next and next and next and next? And there's nothing as stressful as that. Okay. The next thing is what we think of in terms of values to action. A lot of people are able to ask themselves, not only what kind of person do I want to be, but what kind of person do I need to be to deal with this situation? In this situation, what kind of person do I need to be? Then they ask themselves, if I was that kind of person, what would I do? The goal is to identify a behavior, identify something to do. And then they do that. That seems to work really, really well. And again, usually it's very, very simple. If I was a good person, what would I do? If I was a good student, what would I do? If I was a good husband, what would I do? And then you just pick one thing. Okay, we look at stress. We know that all kinds of things cause stress. It's good and bad. We could do a full day on stress and different resources, and there's a lot out there, and we tend to focus on that. However, one of the things we know is that when we have stress, both for good or bad, we're either focused on the future or we're focused on the past. We're out of the present, what they call flow, okay, or a meditative state. So we can artificially induce that. Sometimes it doesn't work. We're stressed anyway. It's hard to force ourselves to relax. But if you maximize the amount of energy you're putting out, then it becomes easier to feel the sensation of relaxation. So I like this one a lot. Okay, hard as you can, hard as you can, hard as you can, then you let it go. Well, that feels good. Right there, you're giving yourself a little vacation. And right there, as you catch that deep breath and relax, you are not thinking of anything else in the future or in the past. You're just totally in the present. And then you get to go back and deal with the things you need to deal with. Okay, and maybe you can apply that to the situation. I want to show one video where I think all this falls together. It's my favorite video. And it's a sport thing, so it looks at a stressful situation. The woman we're looking at, the athlete we're looking at, is this woman. She's competing to get on the U.S. Olympic team. I believe this is about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And she's a brilliant runner. She's a brilliant runner, and she has a strategy. And what she does, what she does is, you'll see as she's running, it's 3 laps around. She's running 600 meters. It's 3 laps around around an arena. Okay. After the first lap, she positions herself behind the person in front. And when they interview her, she goes, "Yeah, I want the girl in front of me to hear me running because I want to freak her out a little bit." Right. So she stays there on purpose. Then on the 3rd lap, she catches up. So what we're looking at is that whole thing about what kind of person do you need to be? We're looking at GPS. What do you need to do? And we're looking at her situation in terms of what does she have that allows her, okay, to do so well at this. She's third right now.
Is probably going to be your favorite. She actually won the NCAA championships in 2006 in the 800, but she only won one Big Ten championship in the 2 years. 3 laps in this event, 600 meters, 3 times around the 200-meter track here at the field house.
What a bold move by Fawn. She's looking very confident. And
Second.
the Penn State runner is just running amazing today. She did win her heat in the 400, but ended up taking 4th overall.
That's Fondor moving into the lead, the sophomore from Penn State. Dornan running second. Dornan last year scored 23 points for the Golden Gophers in their Big Ten championship. So they're really relying on getting a lot of points from her this weekend. And she's just coming by Fondor now in the home stretch, heading into the bell line. Dornan falling down, gets up quickly, but that's going to cost her. Lucky she wasn't injured. Her teammate just went to the front, though, so they may be able to recover from that. And Dornan is flying down the backstretch.
She's catching up.
She is going to catch Fondor, and she may catch the leader.
Wow. Well, she's got fun.
This is a gutsy effort by Dornan. She's moving to third. Dornan coming down the stretch from the outside. Dornan coming out strong. Dornan all the way. Dornan. She did it. Wow, unbelievable. That is amazing. To fall in a 600, I mean, this is basically a sprint. I mean, this is an extended 400, basically.
Okay, I'm interested in GPS method, values to action. Wait 1 second.
She trips on Fawn's shoe.
Okay. So right there, final thing we'll finish with, and why I like this so much, is we got to see a living example of all the things I'm talking about. Oops. Okay, kind of a living example. So she has this thing going on. It's going well. It all crashes and burns. While she's bouncing across the ground on her face out there in public, nobody would have blamed her if she just went, oh no, oh no, oh no. My thinking is what saved her is how quickly she shifted from, oh no, to what do I need to do now? Okay. Then how quickly she shifted from I'm doing well to I'm on the ground. I mean, the girl's like 18, 19. There's no period of our lives where we're more self-conscious and easily embarrassed than in our teens, right? Obviously. Okay. But she was able to, at some level, what kind of athlete am I? I need to get up and run. I think I love this because it's inspiring, but also it's representative of the things we're talking about. People who are able to, have an easier time of difficult situations, and that's all we're talking about, seem to, and the research shows, do some version of the two things we've talked about. One is they're able to shift away from, oh no, to what do I need to do now? One step at a time, and then they do that, right? For the girl, I need to get up. I need to run fast. Or they're able to say to themselves, what kind of person do I need to be now? Which is different than, oh, I wish I was more of this. I wish I was more confident, but I'm not. Rather, they're able to say, what kind of person do I need to be? Well, I'm applying for a job. I need to be more confident. Then they go. They don't wait to feel that. They go, if I was more confident, what would I do? And then they do that. Anyway, time's up. We have like 5 minutes. I really hope some of this was useful for you. We'll be sending out a PDF of all the slides. I'm happy to make contact with anybody. I do a lot of these kind of things, but does anybody have any comments or questions or thoughts? Fiona, do we have anything coming in?
Someone's keen to know who that runner was. I suppose you don't know now if it's quite a little bit old.
Her name is Dorndon, D-O-R-N-D-O-N.
I think some people just had a bit of a problem with the video, so they're going to go back.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll include a link to the video.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Any questions, thoughts? It's Friday before a good weekend, I hope.
Lots of thank yous, great strategies. They love the GPS method, as do I. Always great. It never says you're an idiot when you take the wrong turn.
I know, I love that. And I turn wrong so often. Seriously, that's a big saver for me. Anyway, everybody, thank you all very, very much. I hope your weekend goes well. I hope you found something of value here.
Thank you, everybody. You will, as Edmond says, we'll be writing to you all, and we're working quite a lot with Edmond in the next couple of months, November and December. So I'll put the links in the email and you can have a look for yourselves. But have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you all very much, everybody. Nice meeting you all. We're seeing you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.